So today is a very auspicious day, the appearance of Lord Ramacandra. So the wonderful thing about the avatars is that they're residing beautifully and happily, eternally in the spiritual world along with all their spiritual associates. But on these days, they come to the material world. They descend to give their mercy, to show their pastimes, and to have different pastimes. Because we know in the spiritual world, there's no birth, there's no death, there's no demons. So when the Lord comes to the material world, suddenly we see his beautiful childhood pastimes. And then we see how he re-establishes Dharma and elevates the devotees and just creates this beautiful, these eternal pastimes that everybody can then take advantage of. So there's many wonderful advantages of the Lord coming to the material world, but really it's his mercy, because he certainly doesn't need to do it, but he's so kind that he comes and reveals himself to the fallen souls. So Valmiki, of course, wrote the Ramayana, and Valmiki was actually at that same time as Lord Ramacandra. He was around at the same time. So one time he asked Narad Muni if Narad Muni could tell him, this is in the Treta Yuga 2 million years ago, could Narad Muni tell him who is virtuous, truthful, full of resolve, possessed of excellent conduct, powerful, lovable, splendorous, above fault-finding, and whom do the demigods dread the wrath of in battle? So Narad Muni answered, in the line of Ikshvaku is Sri Ram. So Sri Ram is powerful, radiant, resolute. His senses are under control. He's highly intelligent, sagacious, eloquent, glorious, beautiful. He has a beautiful visage. He's a mighty stature. He's illustrious. He's full of wisdom. He protects the living entities. He slays his enemies. He is noble. He is profound. And actually, the list goes on and on. In the Valmiki Ramayana, the list of the Lord's glories goes on. So Valmiki, of course, wrote about the pastimes and character of Lord Ram. So we know that Lord Ram came at the request of the demigods because they were being harassed. At that time, of course, in such a yuga, pretty much everybody was a saint and a sage. So Treta Yuga comes along, and you've got these beautiful hermitages in which sages perform sacrifices, and of course cities here and there where people are pious. In general, people in Treta Yuga are very pious and godly. But you have this element of demons. So these demons loved to disturb the devotees, so much so that they would go to the sages' hermitages, and it's described sometimes they would shower stool down on the altar and on the whole hermitage. They were completely wicked, intent on giving trouble to the saintly persons. And there was one very wicked, powerful demon, most powerful demon, Ravan, who was giving trouble to all. In fact, I think his name means one who makes people cry. His very name, Ravan. So Ravan was doing his business, making people cry, torturing and harassing the sages, and altogether making a total nuisance of himself. So the demigods prayed, because they have no shelter. They know their shelter is Lord Krishna. So they prayed to Lord Vishnu to please help them at this time. So Lord Vishnu came in his advent as Sri Ramacandra. So Sri Ramacandra, we know that the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita is explained, Paritranaya sadhunam vinaschayata duskritam. The incarnations of the Lord have two purposes, to glorify the devotees, save the devotees, and to destroy the demons and re-establish Dharma. So this is exactly Lord Ram's purpose, and this is why he came. So he actually achieved multi-purposes. These purposes are the reasons he came, but actually he achieved so much. For example, Srila Prabhupada explains that Sri Ram came to show the ideal kings, how an ideal king will behave. And you can't get a better king than the Lord, the Supreme Lord. He's the best of everything. He's perfect at everything. So as a king, he was, of course, completely above any question on his character. He was flawless, and he was very compassionate. It's described that his whole demeanor towards people was very beautiful and compassionate. He glanced at people with such compassion. So his rule is still famous. That time that Lord Ram ruled in Treta Yuga is still famous. And yet there have been so many kings. We know Maharaj Yudhisthira, Maharaj Kriket. Throughout history there are so many Vedic kings, and we have stories of them in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But why is Lord Ram's ruling as a king so famous? And that's because he is the Supreme Lord, and he epitomized perfection of everything. So I wanted to go through the 6 qualities of Bhagavan and talk about them in relation to Lord Ram. So regarding all knowledge, Sri Ram, right from young, he was taught, of course he knew all these things automatically, he knows everything, but he studied all the science of Vedas and all the auxiliaries. He had an extremely sharp memory and a very quick wit. So he knew the heart of every living entity. He knew what was going on. When the citizens would come to speak to him, he was completely aware of what was going on, because he's all-knowing. And he knew Dharma so much so that he was the emblem of Dharma. Lord Rama is called the emblem of Dharma. He embodied Dharma. So it is said of Krishna that one should listen to Krishna's words, but one should not imitate his pastimes. In fact, if you imitate the pastimes of Krishna, you'll go to hell. But with Lord Ramacandra, his actions are perfect. And if one follows the actions the way Lord Ram acted, then one will get perfection. So, all strength. When Lord Ramacandra was simply in his youth, he was taken by Vishvamitra Muni to Janak's kingdom. Of course, there was a great plan. He should kill some demons. This is before he killed any demons, and he achieved that goal very easily. And then he was taken to Janak's kingdom. Janak had this fantastic, mighty bow. This bow was so huge that in order to lift it, it required 300 men. So that bow was kind of, because it was kind of on show, you know, it was very kept very prominently. And his wonderful transcendental daughter, Sita Devi, who appeared and was given to him to take care of. One day, King Janak was observing. Sita came with her left hand. She picked up that bow and she used it to get some flowers from the tree and put it down again. So King Janak was like, oh my gosh, who can I get for a husband for Sita? If she embraces someone, she'll crush them. She's so strong. I have to have an even stronger person. So he advertised that anybody who could go to his kingdom and pick up this bow would be able to have Sita for his wife. So Vishvamitra took Lord Ram there and he encouraged him to pick up this bow. So Lord Ram, nobody could pick it up. People were struggling and sweating and trying to pick up this bow. No luck, but Sri Ramacandra quickly picked up the bow and he actually doubled the bow as he set the arrow to it. He broke that bow in the middle. He just completely broke it. It's like a child would break a plaything. So then Janak was completely ecstatic and Sita was able to garland Sri Ram and they were married. So not only did he have physical strength, he was very exceptional with all weapons. Of course they had all weapons because they had they knew in those days the Kshatriyas were taught the mantras to wield the weapons of the demigods. But Lord Ram particularly was very adept with the bow and arrow. And it was his weapon of choice. So when he actually, I'm not going to actually talk about his, the whole Leela, but once Lord Ram was banished to the forest, they encountered many demons and he killed demons. For the sages would come and ask for protection, and Lord Ram would immediately grant protection and make sure that their sacrifices took place and get rid of any demons who were harassing them. So at one stage, we know the story of Shurpanakha, who came and she saw the beautiful form of Lord Ram and she immediately became smitten. And she approached Lord Ram. So the story is that in the end Lakshman cut off her nose and ears. She happened to be the sister of Ravan. She also had two brothers called Kara and Dushan, and they lived in the forest. So she went outraged to her two brothers, and they brought an army of 14,000 ogres. So those ogres were like bigger than like people, and very strong and complete demons. They're flesh eaters, and so they came to attack. And at the time Lord Ram was living in Chitrakoot forest. And so then he took on these 14,000 demons alone. And it's described that his bow was in a constant circle as he was shooting, and he would take hundreds of thousands of arrows. Of course, he had this quiver that was always could be replaced with arrows. So he would take out hundreds of thousands of arrows and shoot them at Kara and Dushan and all these demons. And he destroyed 14,000 of them standing alone on the battlefield. So Lord Ram was it personifies strength. And again in Lanka, of course, he fought so fiercely, demon after demon, and they were very powerful demons, using all sorts of illusory tricks, etc. But he was able to defeat them all. And re-establish his dear devotee Vibhishan there. So, regarding all fame, of course, Lord Ram's fame was, even at that time, spread far and wide in all directions. And Srimad Bhagavatam also states that Lord Ram's fame was spread in all directions. And people still speak of Ram Raj. In India they'll talk about Ram Raj, how fantastic it was when Lord Ram was the king. But Srila Prabhupada always says, they want Ram Raj, but they don't want Ram. But why is it so celebrated? Because everybody was completely happy in Lord Ram's kingdom. Under his rule, they were very happy. So he comes from the glorious ISKCON dynasty, and he's very famous for his truth, his promise, his submission to his elders. So when he was requested by his father in great sorrow, but his father requested him, now I have to fulfill this boon of Kaikeyi, I have to ask you to go to the forest. At that time, the day before, he'd been told, you will be coronated king. So the whole city was abuzz, everyone was in ecstasy, making this beautiful festival areas for Lord Ram's coronation. And everyone was at the height of ecstasy and happiness. And everything was auspicious, everything was perfect. And then he gets taken to his father and told that you are going to be, you can't be the king any longer. So he was so truthful and so sort of famous for keeping his word, he immediately said to his father, all right, I'll go to the forest. Now, anybody, he's learned diplomacy, he knows diplomacy. He could say, well, let's just wait a little while, let's try to do this, make this arrangement, make that arrangement, let's come to an agreement. But immediately, this is why he's so famous for his word, he immediately submitted to his mother, and without any rancor or spite or any bad feeling towards Kaikeyi, he accepted that on his head and departed for the forest. So he's very famous for these qualities. He's also famous for protecting the devotees and very famous for his morality. So Lord Ram actually, when he was at Vibhishan's coronation, Lord Ram actually said, anyone who says, from this day forth, I am yours, then he said, I will protect, nourish, and maintain them materially and spiritually. So what Lord Ram says, he will do. He's not tricky like our Lord Krishna here. He keeps his promises. So we can remember that when we want to feel that surrendered mood to Lord Ram. So the sages, saintly kings and demigods still glorify Lord Ram for his all his wonderful qualities, his truthfulness, following Dharma, etc. So all wealth. So I was just going to read just a couple of verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam about the palace of Lord Ram. The whole city was beautiful. It was decorated with gold and silver and beautifully decorated mirrors, tapestries everywhere. Ayodhya was very ecstatically opulent. So this is Lord Ram's palace. Thereafter Lord Ram entered the palace of his forefathers. Within the palace were various treasures and valuable wardrobes. The sitting places on the two sides of the entrance door were made of coral. The yard was surrounded by pillars of Vaiduryamani. The floor was made of highly polished Marakatamani, and the foundation was made of marble. The entire palace was decorated with flags, garlands, bedecked with valuable stones, shining with a celestial effulgence. The palace was fully decorated with pearls and surrounded by lamps and incense. The men and women within the palace all resembled demigods and were decorated with various ornaments which seemed beautiful because of being placed in their bodies. So Lord Ram had a very opulent city, Ayodhya, and all wealth. When he resumed back from the forest, Bharat went and conquered many kings. Bharat and Shatrughna went in various directions to conquer, to bring back wealth for Lord Ram. And it's described that Bharat killed hundreds of thousands of Gandharvas, mischievous Gandharvas, and brought all their wealth for Lord Ram. And actually, one other thing is Shatrughna, he went to and established the forest of Mahavan as Lord Ram's, and the city of Mathura. And when we were on Brajmandala Parikram many years ago, we went to a particular temple, and I don't remember. We went to two temples in Mathura. One has a white Varaha and one has a black Varaha. So one of those Varahas, I can't remember if it was white or black, was the worshipful deity of Shatrughna. And when he went there, he left that deity there. And to this day, that deity is being worshipped in Mathura, Shatrughna's deity. So, all wealth. Yes. So although it was Treta Yuga, it sort of became Satya Yuga in its opulence because, this is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, because of Lord Ram's presence there, it became like Satya Yuga. Treta Yuga became like Satya Yuga. So all renunciation. So Lord Ram was brought up as Prince Regent and nothing was spared. He was adored by everyone. So once he was informed that next day he'd be coronated, and then told, no, you have to go to the forest, he was totally at peace with going to the forest. In fact, he wanted to go alone. That meant he had to give up Sita and all his beloved citizens who loved him so much to go to the forest. But he had no compunction about that. He was completely happy. He wanted to go to the forest. His mindset completely altered in the blink of an eye, that he was happy to become a renunciate and walk around. He'd had, beautiful massaged lotus feet and beautiful sandals, and suddenly he was to walk in the forest with no shoes, that was being pricked by the thorns, etc., wearing matted locks and the garb of an ascetic, bark of trees, and simply eating roots and fruits. But there was no hint of any feeling of lack or loss in Lord Ram. And of course we know Sita and Lakshman accompanied and served him at their insistence. But when he returned to Ayodhya after killing Ravan, installing Vibhishan, etc., he ruled with Sita for many years, thousands of years. But then, as soon as he went out and heard, he would go sometimes incognito in the city to make sure all the citizens were happy. As soon as he heard the whisper from a common man of a slight aspersion against Sita Devi, then immediately he decided, okay, Sita has to be removed. So it's a heartbreaking thing. Lakshman was like begging and in tears, and he had to take Sita to the forest and leave her in the forest. But Lord Ram remained completely peaceful. If you think of the most renounced person you've ever heard of, because Lord Ram's the Supreme Lord, he's going to be the epitome of renunciation, because he's the epitome of all these divine qualities. So, Srila Prabhupada does talk about how when Sita Devi was taken away, Srila Prabhupada talks about, he sort of jokes sometimes, well, from Lord Ram's example we can see how much trouble a man has to go to for protecting his wife. But actually, he also explains, in one of his lectures, he's explaining that that attachment and separation from Sita is actually vipralamba. It's an activity of the hladini, or the bliss potency of the Lord. It's part of Sringara Ras, the mellow of conjugal love in the spiritual world. So when he was separated from her, when she was taken away by Ravan, because she was under his protection, he exhibited many symptoms of, many strong symptoms of separation. But actually, Prabhupada's explaining, he's Satchidananda Vigraha, he's the form of knowledge and bliss. So that feeling separation is an aspect of that bliss, just as in Krishna's pastimes. After he was so young, he went to Mathura, and then he went to Dwarka, but he was always feeling separation, and all the Srimati Radharani and all the cowherd girls, all the residents from Vrindavan, the cowherd boys, everyone was just about dying in separation. So this is a pastime, and then there's so much bliss that hladini that sort of envelops this pastime. These pastimes. And the same with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was also feeling, because he was in Radharani's mood, he was feeling these feelings of intense separation. So, although Lord Ram personifies renunciation, he still has these wonderful mellows of bliss and separation, etc. So all beauty. So Lord Ram, of course, we know, is ecstatically beautiful. He's according to Srila Prabhupada, he's the most important of all the avatars and is endowed with all beauty. So Lord Ram is greenish, just like fresh grass. Very beautiful. And he has beautiful large lotus eyes, he has broad shoulders, powerful arms, he has a neck shaped like a conch shell. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. He has a broad chest, and the Valmiki Ramayana describes a stout chin, a stout chin, broad chest, well-formed head, shapely forehead, charming gait, arms extending to his knees, well-proportioned limbs. He has auspicious marks on his body, and his countenance or expression is always very pleasing. So the citizens of Ayodhya were thrilled to be able to see the Lord daily, and they felt that their lives were auspicious. In those days, the kings, like if someone wanted to go see the king, or had some complaint or whatever, not that there were complaints, but Prabhupada says they didn't have to wait 6 months for a court case. They could immediately go to the king. So Lord Ram was available every day for the citizens to see, unless he was travelling. So in this context, one day Lord Ram had been away for a month, and then Lakshman introduced this Brahmin to Lord Ram and said he has to see you, because if he doesn't see you, he won't take water and he won't eat. He made this vow, and you've been gone for a month, so he has to see you. And Lord Ram was so touched, and we know that Lord Ram is in the line of Ikshvaku, so Ikshvaku himself, Lord Ram's eternal, so Ikshvaku himself always worshipped a deity of Lord Ram, and that deity was worshipped by all Lord Ram's ancestors. So that deity, when Lord Ram came himself and was ruling, that deity, he placed the deity away because he himself was being worshipped. So then he asked Lakshman, please fetch this deity and give this deity to this Brahmana, so he does not have to fast again. He can come and offer respects to the deity, and then he can take his food every day, whether I'm travelling or not. And that deity, Prabhupada is telling the story, in one Ram Navami lecture, and Prabhupada says that deity is still being worshipped in South India. So, I was contemplating at the moment. I have been reading Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd Canto, where the 4 Kumaras are just cursing those 2 doorkeepers, and suddenly out walks the Supreme Lord Narayan. He's there with Lakshmi himself, and it's described that the Kumaras were so ecstatic because they'd only seen Krishna in the heart when it's described in ecstatic trance, and here is Lord Vishnu appearing right before them with Lakshmi. So they were like so entranced. So in the same way, the Prabhupada's saying that an ordinary person cannot see the Lord, but in Ayodhya and even in the forest, all these residents, and of course the residents of Ayodhya are eternal, but there were many others that saw Lord Ram face to face, saw that beauty, that astounding beauty face to face. When he went in the forest, when he would travel out, people would actually get to see the Supreme Lord face to face, and it was always like it's like that moment, that intense moment of ecstasy when suddenly the Lord is before you. So this is the kindness of the Lord as he comes as an avatar and reaches out to common people, and all the monkeys, all the entities in the forest. They were all blessed, because they actually got to see the Supreme Lord. And Lakshman, of course, we know that they're Bharat, Shatrughna, Lakshman, they're all plenary portions of the Lord. They're all the Supreme Lord. But it's just so amazing to think that they were able to actually see the Lord face to face every single day. So on these appearance days, we like to associate with the Lord through hearing. So Prabhupada's explaining how much when we talk about Lord Ram, when we talk about the pastimes of Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, how purifying that is. So on these days we can really absorb in remembering these pastimes of the Lord. There's one story yes. Okay. There's a story of Lord Ravan when he went to see his brother Vibhishan, and we know that Vibhishan was a devotee, and so Ravan was pretty sort of suspicious of Vibhishan because he was very fair-minded. He wasn't demonic like Kumbhakarna and all his associates and brothers. Everyone was demonic in that family, but Vibhishan was like, so he always had his suspicions a little bit about Vibhishan. So he went to Vibhishan's palace and he saw Ram, Ram, Ram on the walls, and he became furious. What, you've got my enemy's name on your walls? And Vibhishan said, no, actually, your name starts with Ra, and your wife Mandodari starts with M. So actually I've put them up there so to remember you, Rama. So Ravan was like, okay. So he had that placed in various places around the city, Rama, so that the citizens could remember him and his wife. So, sorry? Yeah. So when Ram wanted to cross the ocean to go to Lanka, the ocean is 800 miles between India and Sri Lanka. So it was not possible to build a bridge 800 miles. So Lord Ram performed austerities for 3 days. He fasted and he performed austerities and he prayed to the ocean personified to come to him. So that's kind of to teach us that if we really want some benediction, then, we should be sincere and do something about it. So in the end, the ocean failed to appear. He had misjudged Lord Ram, and so Ram began to churn up the whole ocean, and the ocean in fear, all the aquatics were being completely disturbed and troubled, and the ocean then humbly appeared and apologized. So Lord Ram said that I want to build an ocean across, and a bridge across the ocean, please facilitate. So that was allowed. So then the monkeys began to collect rocks and carry rocks. And when they picked up these rocks, they wrote the name of Ram on the rocks. So the rocks, when they were placed in the ocean, they floated. And at one stage, Lord Ram was like, well, what's going on here? Why are you writing Ram on the rocks? So Hanuman said to him, well, with your name there, everything becomes potent. And Lord Ram said, but I'm here. So why is the need? And so Hanuman said, you please throw a rock in the ocean. So he threw a rock in the ocean and it sank. So Lord Ram conceded that his holy name is more powerful than he himself. Anyway, the idea is that when we chant the Maha Mantra, we have Sita and Ram within that mantra. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and it's non-different. We've got Krishna, we've got Ram, even Prabhupada said Balaram is there. So that Maha Mantra is exceedingly potent, 4 Hares, 4 Krishnas and 4 Rams. So, oh yes, they also compare the fact that the jiva, if he doesn't put the name of Krishna on his tongue, he's going to sink in the material world. So the name of Krishna and the sort of glorious benediction we've been given is to be able to chant this Maha Mantra every day of our lives. We kind of cannot estimate our good fortune. So it's like a miraculous gift that Prabhupada's given us, that we can chant these names of Krishna and Lord Ram and Srimati Radharani, Sita Devi, every day of our lives. So today, Prabhupada has always said that if you pray to the pure devotees or to the Lord on their appearance days, they give special mercy because they're especially compassionate on these days. So it's always prudent to really think about the benedictions that you may ask for, but once you've given some thought to that and really prayed to the Lord, then the Lord is bestowing His mercy on these days, so we can really pray to the Lord to give us the strength to go forward in our Krishna consciousness, to help get rid of our anartas. It's described that when Ravan's heads were being shot off, they represented different anartas that Rama had. So we've all got these different anartas, and we can pray to the Lord to remove them and to allow us to edge ever closer to be able to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, Lord Ram, and to be able to get His mercy. So I think that was all I had to say today. Thank you very much. If anybody has any discussion or any pastimes they'd like to share about Lord Ram, that would be very nice. Any special pastimes? Yeah.
It was actually the beauty of the deity of Lord Brahmadev was actually Indra was worshipping that deity, and then Ravana actually took that deity from Indra's kingdom, and he had it. Lord Ram took it from Lanka, and then he was sending him to kill Ravana. So he ended up believing and said, "Oh, I'll give you this deity."
Right. Nice.
So Ravana was actually had that
Wow.
deity, and he worshipped him.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, because Ravan, was raised properly, but unfortunately, his demonic nature, because Krishna, he was one of the doorkeepers of Lord Vishnu, so he's a very great devotee. So the Lord bestowed upon them the benediction to be the worst of demons. So Lord Ravan was a really bad demon, killed by Lord Ram. Anybody?
Question.
Oh, question.
Who was it went Lord Ram on his walls?
Vibhishan.
Okay, did he actually have it because of the reason that he said? Or
No, he was a devotee of Lord Ram. I guess he didn't expect his brother to pay him a visit. But anyway, he was ready with it's described that Vibhishan had a very quick wit and he was very clever, so.
That's a good information.
Jai. Shri Ramacandra ki jai.